do this.
Let's do it.
Let's do this.
All right, I'm going to start us off. Woo-hoo-hoo!
All right, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carol Baldwin, and I'm on the steering committee of the Weston League of Women Voters and help organize some of our events. Really excited to have you all here. Hopefully more people will show up. I'm glad we didn't go outside. We usually do this in the lawn, which is lovely, but just at noon it started sprinkling, so woo! Let me go to my notes here. The League of Women Voters, if you're not familiar with it, is a nonpartisan, I want to emphasize that, nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and works to increase the understanding of major public policy issues, hence today's event. The League is a group of men, women and men, I was going to say, so feel free to join, even if you're a man, who believe in the power of voters to make a difference and to advocate for good government and the local and state and national levels. We have a Weston website for the League, and it's actively kept current, and it's a great place if you're looking for, who's the current head of the Conservation Commission or this or that. It'll be there and how to reach them, so it's a great source, and also has the videotapes of our previous events. Today's event, Jamie Wiley over there is going to be videotaping. Woo-hoo! And so you'll be able to find that as well as all of our other events on our website. I want to also direct your eyes to the tables in the back. There's one with all sorts of information about the League. And how many of you are members of the League? Okay, there are a few here who aren't. So please feel free to look at the information. And if you join today, we have a special offer. We have a very generous member of our steering committee who will buy you a pie from Christina's Pies if you become a member today. So consider that. The pies are delicious. It's our own Christina Mattinson. And she's just out in the back. She has savory and sweet pies. She has some quiches. So consider that. And also wave Kermit Daniel. Woohoo! He is here representing America 250 and Weston's celebration of it. He's got swag, if you want some swag. And there's just a lot that's going to start happening in the next few days as we lead up to the 4th of July. And his wife, and I'm sure he's been helping, Jennifer Daniel, has just done an amazing job of organizing all sorts of really exciting events in Weston. I went to a fabulous lecture on colonial weaving at the Historical Society, which I would never have even thought would be interesting, and it was absolutely fascinating. So let's see. Get back to my notes. I am going to ask both of our representatives to start by talking, 5 minutes or less about what they thought was important in this year's legislative session, this past session. And then we'll open it up to questions. So, and I'll have a mic and pass it around, or probably you can just ask it out loud. Let's all be polite and civil and avoid personal attacks, and try to keep our questions and our answers to about 3 minutes. I don't have a timer, but let's just try to ask questions and get answers. So without further ado, on my left is our Representative Ann Hughes, and on my further left is State Senator C.C. Maurer. And I'm so happy to have them both. Thank you for giving us some time today.
Okay, so hi, I'm C.C. Maurer. This is a hard question always when people say, what is the most important? Because the spring session in the even year is a very fast session. So that it is about 12 weeks where we start, we introduce bills, we have committee meetings, we have public hearings, and then we go into session and start debating them. And that 12 weeks goes like in a blink of the eye. So really what I was deep in the weeds on was my own committee and not only getting all of the committee work done, but also getting it through the legislature. So that means that as soon as we get a bill through committee and it gets voted out of committee to be discussed on the floor, not only do I have to make sure it gets called in the Senate, but then I have to make sure it gets called in the House, and vice versa for my co-chair from the House. We're working constantly. Sorry?
Which committee?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the chair of the Children's Committee, co-chair of the Children's Committee. So I was really focused this year on 3 different areas. One was making sure, and this is going to sound really in the weeds, but I think it's incredibly important. Almost every town in Connecticut has 169 towns. Almost every single town has a municipal camp where children go to camp in the summertime. They're a less expensive option. They're really fun. They were organically grown, i.e. maybe someone started to have 20 kids and then it grew into this and then it grew into that. Municipal camps are not licensed at all. They do not have to be licensed. And so last year I tried to pass a bill, and I spent an entire session, long session on it, and I could not get it through the House. I got it through the Senate, but not the House. The reason this is important is there were no mandated reporting requirements for municipal camps. There were no licensing about first aid requirements. Any of the camp requirements that happen in all of the independent camps didn't exist. Now, that doesn't mean that municipalities weren't doing it. Maybe some were. But we know that there was a really bad case 2 years ago where a counselor was abusing a child. It was not, it was found out, it was not reported, and that counselor went on to abuse up to 5 kids. It was really bad. So this year, that was one of my main focuses, was to get this bill through. So all I did was make sure that every single camp has to have mandated reporting training. And the municipalities say, well, that's going to cost us so much money. I'm sorry, I'm so in the weeds. I'm going to take up all the time. They said it's going to cost us so much money, but no, it's online, free, 45 minutes. The second thing I did was to make sure that every single camp in Connecticut, municipal, has to fill out a 10-question survey about what kind of camps are they? How many camp kids do they have? How many counselors do they have? Where do they hold their camps? We don't know any of that. For 169 towns, figure if there's 100 kids per town, right? I mean, 1,000 kids maybe, 100 kids. We have no idea what they're doing, what their services are. So I am not going to be able to see the results of that report, but because I won't be running again. But I am going to, but Sam Nestor here will see that report, hopefully, when she's elected. But the thing is, I know that we will have more information about municipal camps in Connecticut, and then I'm not trying to make a lot of laws around this, but what I do want to do is provide services to municipalities. So the Office of Early Childhood provides support and services and direction for all the licensed camps in the state. So now we'll be able to do the same thing for municipalities because we'll know what the needs are. So while it seems like just a little thing, I feel like it's something that really
Worth
is going to...
Worth applauding, no, seriously. Yeah.
So, and it took a lot. It took a lot, trust me, to get that bill done. But we got it through, both houses. The second thing I was working on, and this is huge, and there's so many components to it, and my co-chair, Corey Parris, in the Children's Committee, was the driver of this, and I, was supporting and helping, but he was the driver. We are looking at DCF, Department of Children and Families. There have been some horrendous situations that have happened with DCF, and there is like oh my God, I think it's something like 26 different sections of the bill, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but one of them is setting up an oversight committee to look at all the functioning of DCF, and that is huge. And then there's lots of other really good aspects to that bill. And the final thing was making sure that the early child care endowment that was set in place a year ago by the governor and funded at $300 million was again funded at $300 million this year. Because over the course of time, by 2032, we will be fully funded between the income from interest and this continuous funding, that we will be able to provide an additional 16,000 slots across Connecticut, that we are going to bring childcare providers' pay rates up, give additional education to them because they are dealing with the youngest of the young in our state, and 80% of child's brain is developed by age 3. Not when they start school, but by age 3. So making sure that early childcare is covered, making sure that we are taking care of providers, increasing the spots, increasing education is just essential. And that was a ton of work to make sure that that got funded again. So those 3 things were my super big focus this year, and there's a lot more we did, but
Thank you,
that's where I
Cece,
was.
for the heavy lifting on behalf of the children. And I feel like more than ever, that has to be our focus. Protect the most at risk, the most vulnerable, and protect our services and make sure that we fully fund them, because we can't count on the federal funding. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this, for hosting this, and for continuously engaging the community in the civic process, because we feel like we are partners with you in passing good policy. We don't want to just react, we want to respond to the needs that you bring us. And I know somebody first off talked to us about PFAS. Where are we with PFAS? We finally did, I'm not on environment committee, but I'm very happy that we finally, starting July 1st, in 3 days, manufacturers are barred from manufacturing, selling, or distributing 12 categories of consumer products with added PFAS unless they submit a specialized chemical disclosure form to DEEP. And they must apply a permanent, highly durable warning label. Again, like Senator Marr said, this is the first step towards regulating something that we really ought to have been regulating, right? We want to create standards so that we can feel safe for our children. I just came from a week of leading baby camp at a licensed camp. So we do have to, all of us volunteers have to pass the mandatory training, a mandatory background check that the state does, and a whole bunch of online trainings around keeping children safe. And the staff have to pass a whole bunch of first aid and CPR and lifeguard and all the things. But we kind of expect that that's the standards throughout all of our camps, and they're not. And now, through the work that Cece and her team have done, are really starting to bring up those standards and providing some resources to do those standards with, and not just heaping it back on the municipalities, because we know how much you love unfunded mandates. I feel like the biggest thing in my 8 years is that we are doing our best to respond to horrific conditions and harms that are coming our way. So we're trying to really protect our human services, protect our supports for intellectually and developmentally disabled, people who are veteran services. We're trying to protect those who are relying on SNAP benefits that are at risk starting now of getting those yanked away from them, just as grocery prices are skyrocketing. And so the harm is happening throughout our state. And we are trying to stand up. We stood up a $500 million emergency response fund before the session even started, because this was happening on a daily basis. And yet we still are required as your legislature to pass a responsible, balanced budget, which we did. And that is not an easy task when the needs are the holes are getting bigger and bigger around our hospitals and our hospital care, and trying to keep hospitals from closing, trying to put some protections around private equity from buying them up and going bankrupt, and then especially our rural areas are left without hospitals, left without labor and delivery. My OBGYN is the only on-call OBGYN for delivering babies up in the northwest corner. So he wears a mask all the time so he never gets sick because he can't afford to not be there and healthy to deliver those babies. Otherwise, they have to go 45 minutes or to Poughkeepsie or to Hartford. And we have seen, I can't believe it's 2026 and we see dangerous births happening, dangerous to the moms and dangerous to the babies. So I think we're both on the maternal health caucus because we have, kind of atrocious outcomes still for especially Black maternal health and Black infants. So we're working on that. So we passed actually a lot of great stuff out of Aging Committee that I'm pretty proud of. Again, around regulation, a lot of our home care industries that are going into our homes with our elders or people with dementia aren't regulated at all by the state. And so we passed some mandatory trainings and again, provided some resources for that, especially around dementia care, around basically oversight over our home care. Before COVID, we had up a little less than 300 companies that provide medical and non-medical home care in our state. Now we have over 1,000, and they're unregulated. They could come in, fly by night, could be a franchise or whatever. And I want families to understand the quality of care and the oversight and the training that their loved one is getting. So again, that's taken several years to kind of close that gap of oversight. We did some expansion of solar, residential solar, community solar, plug-in solar. Again, it's going to take a while to roll that out, but those solar caps on residential were really problematic. There are still issues with finally we're getting some offshore wind, renewable energy into the grid, but again, in this session, the federal administration tried to shut down our offshore wind projects twice, stop work orders, which are very costly, and paying $1 billion to a foreign company to not develop offshore wind in our country. So we are dealing with a very hostile administration towards renewable energy and pivot towards responsible energy. And we have, of course, the highest energy rates in the country, right? So we're trying to figure out how do we bring down responsibly and have oversight over some of these rate hikes. Eversource just asked for a new rate hike. We've all signed letters saying to our Public Utility Regulatory Authority to deny them and to make it more consumer friendly. The other thing we're trying to do is rein in the long-term care. How many of you have long-term care insurance? Anybody? Okay. Wow. Have you noticed ridiculous increases in your premiums in the last several years? No? No? Well, you're a lucky one. I want to know who you're getting your long-term care with. So again, we're trying to create some, if you will, guardrails and to have the insurance commissioner review long-term care insurance increases, because a lot of people are losing what they have put into long-term care for years and years and years, and they can't afford it anymore. What we did do, which I also took all 8 years of proposing this, is a caregiver's tax credit for family members that are caring for a loved one at home, to finally get a tax credit of acknowledgement that you're doing, unpaid work that is ultimately, we believe, saving the state money because they're not going into long-term care. Most of our nursing homes are 80% Medicaid residents. 80% of the residents are Medicaid. And we on the MAPOC committee, Medicare Medicaid Oversight Committee, we keep strict oversight, we know of all of our facilities and hospitals that use Medicaid, and we have a responsibility that those state dollars are used well, safe discharge planning, all those things. So that's just a highlight. I did put out major public acts. These are just sort of, this is not an exhaustive summary. There is a website that you can go to find all of them, but it gives you a table of contents of what we did pass and some of the highlights and some of the major ones. So please take one of these if you're interested, and we can also communicate by email.
Thanks so much. Senator Marr, do you want to just add anything before we open up to questions or respond to anything that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would want to say is, Anne referenced the budget. I think it's really important to note that we have paid down $10 billion in our pension debt, $10 billion in our pension debt in the last 8 years. And that has released about $900 million a year in the interest that we're not paying, which is great because that goes back to be able to be used in the budget. We still have, I think, $35 billion still to pay down. I think it's important to mention that because this was a 70-year problem.
Mm-hmm.
For 70 years, we did not pay anything into the pensions.
Our debt liability.
And so that's Republican, Democrat governors just kept kicking the can down the road. And since Governor Malloy came in 2011, he started us on GAAP accounting. We weren't even doing generally accepted accounting practices, which is beyond belief to me as a state. So starting in 2011, we did that. In 2017, we put in place the fiscal guardrails that became used starting in the 2018 budget. And since that time, we have then paid down $10 billion. That is no small amount of money. However, you'll hear people rail against the fact that we're the most indebted state in the country and that we just are out of control. I would argue that we are not out of control. I would argue that we are trying to do our very best to be, and we're not always doing a great job, but doing our very best to be balanced between paying down our pension liabilities and taking care of that requirement, which we should have been doing all along, and also doing things like we did this year, which is making sure that we are getting Medicaid reimbursements back up for hospitals, because we have not been paying hospitals what they need. They were getting 60 cents on a dollar. 60 cents on a dollar reimbursement. Well, you can't do that forever. So that's number one. Second thing was education cost sharing. We have stayed at $11,000 per student, oh my God, for over 12 years. This year we raised it to $13,000. Now you all know, if you look at your school Board of Ed budget, that is nowhere near what it costs. But nonetheless, we did raise it to $13,000 and reimburse towns for it this year for the first time, with the idea that we are now going to go on a cost of living increase on education cost sharing going forward, which is good news. Hopefully we can afford to do it, but this is what the plan is, and that's what we passed. And the third area is in the social services. The nonprofits in our state end up providing the vast bulk of social services for the entire state. And we need to make sure that we're doing like a scale. We're making sure we're paying our pension debts, but we have to also look at these three other areas: education, health, and social services, to make sure that we're funding them, because otherwise, if we pay down our pension debt and like over index our fiscal guardrails, we are then causing a starvation diet in the same way we did with the pensions previously. So if you read anything about us being in debt, yes, we are, but I think that we are also working really hard to make sure we stay balanced and we pay off our liabilities. And it's a process, and it's going to take years.
That's good summary.
I feel as a member of the League of Women Voters, I have to throw out the first question, which would be, what about voting rights in our state? And can you just talk about those issues right now?
Do you want to take that? Or?
I'll start and
Okay.
yeah, you know, when I started 8 years ago, we had the most restrictive voting in the country. We had no early voting. We had very, very stringent, you had to have excuses for absentee ballot voting, and they had to be these very specific defined excuses. So finally, and because it's in our Constitution, we had to pass any kind of changes to voting. It had to pass through either 2/3 majority or twice majority, 2 consecutive sessions, then go on to a referendum on your ballot that you had to vote on, and then once you passed that, we could make those changes. So we finally passed early voting. I've heard a lot from the poor registrars that it's too long. We couldn't change it this year until we passed no excuse absentee ballot voting, how we were going to do that. And so we finally put that through this year. That was a huge thing. It should have been last session, but we put it through this year to make some really changes and make it smoother and make it easier for anybody to vote absentee if they wanted to, especially, you know, whoever. And then once we implement that, which will be implemented this fall, we can start to take a look at pulling back some of the early voting. But we couldn't do both at the same time if we hadn't implemented both yet. So there is a section on here about voting.
Page 12.
Page 12. Refer to your page 12. And again, poor co-chairs of government administration and elections, but we have absentee ballot tracking software for voters to track their ballots. You just need to make an application the first time that you want to be sent an application every time. If that, you know, if that's what they want to automatically receive absentee ballot applications. And then anyone can vote absentee. Yeah, sure. I have more in the back there if you want them. We also allowed early voting ballots to be counted and stored in the tabulators, those brand new tabulators that we finally got. We have required certain entities to notify Secretary of State of election-related court actions, for example, claims involving the state's Voting Rights Act, limiting voter registration information that's available under state's Freedom of Information Act. We have not given over to the feds our voter data. So, you know, we will always take them to court before we will invade your privacy. Say, take us to court, we will fight you in court. Our Attorney General's really great around that. Mm-hmm. And then there's, we've allowed SEEK, the State Elections Enforcement Commission, to investigate and resolve alleged violations of election regulations, and anyone who's 17 that will be 18 by election day can use absentee and early voting. And
I think the ICE.
yeah.
The
The ICE
oversight.
thing. Yeah. The ICE thing. So we have said we do not want ICE officials or intimidators within 250 feet. They may not wear masks. We are banning masks in general, and they must be identified in badges and whatever from a wider safety area around courthouses, hospitals, schools, houses of worship, and then there's a civil right of action if they violate our laws, that we can take individual officers who do that to court.
And then not just in voting, but across.
Across these rogue, yeah. We've got questions. Hopefully we can answer. But that was again something that has been coming up for more than this year, and we finally did it. Let's see.
No. Okay.
Hi, my name's Barbara. I
thank you, ladies, for all you've done for us, because it means a lot to know that we have sensible people with kindness in their hearts.
Oh,
So
thank
thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
You're making me cry.
I was crying when I was saying that, actually. I have a few comments, and you can tell me to shut up when...
Never.
Because I've lived in Weston since 1980. I was talking to Monica earlier, and I paid taxes before my children went to school, while they were in school, after they left school, and then I paid, I raised my granddaughter here in town, so I was still paying taxes, and then paying taxes afterwards. And I've got to the point where I'm almost going to be taxed out of living in my home and trying to make everything work, because it's just got so expensive. So that is a major question for me, you know, dealing with that. And so that's one thing. The other thing you would raise towards the end was the solar, which I had done a process with and got almost approved for. And then I found out that I was 9 feet away from the distance that they would do for the, they were going to make me install a new electric pole, which was going to cost $14K. It's like, really? I'm 9 feet away. And that just seems crazy, which basically means that everybody on my street is not going to be able to do solar. And they came and checked everything else, and that was the reason.
Can I ask you when that survey was done of the?
Last year.
Okay, because
Yeah.
we just increased, we just passed increasing community solar and some more subsidies and how to roll it out, but it's going to take a little while to do that. We also just passed plug-in solar that you can plug it in and use that for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
Balcony
That's
solar.
what
It's
I
not
would
gonna,
like-
it's,
yeah.
it's not enough to power your entire car. It'll take a while.
yeah.
But, you know, we needed to be able to, you know, adopt these things that other surrounding states are already doing, like, oh.
Well, to your
why?
point, Barbara, though, I think what you're asking is like, how are we going to help with your taxes,
With affordability.
the affordability in town? And you were trying to do that with solar, bring down your energy costs.
Well, that's one of the things, but, you know, I was eligible for tax abatement and other stuff, and then I had been paid $3,000 more than, you know,
To qualify, you mean?
yeah, to qualify.
Oh, no.
So that was withdrawn, so I don't get that anymore.
So with the solar, Anne's point about making sure that customers who install, lease, or subscribe to or otherwise contract with renewable energy sources are compensated, because that is a huge piece of what we're going to be doing, is looking at successor programs. So Anne can take what you just said up as they're developing to the chair of the Energy Committee to look at this piece of 9 feet of making,
Yeah,
you know,
that's crazy.
the impact on you of $14,000 on a pole.
Between the distance between me and you
Yeah.
right now, basically.
No, we need to create flexibility.
That
and-
needs to be
and-
looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we are going to actually be so independent and reduce our energy rates, I know that one of the conversations out there is publicly ownership of the energy companies, which is not a possibility in this state.
Yeah.
It just isn't. We don't have the infrastructure, the actual physical infrastructure to do that, except in some towns.
Yeah.
Some, like Norwalk does, one of their taxing district does.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you talked about in terms of taxes, we just this year, when we were looking at budgets, sent $100 million back to towns for them to use in the ways that they wanted to, because of the property taxes, because of the increases in costs to residents. When the state is not determining who or how that, who it goes to or how it's used. Each town is allowed to do that. And I don't know where Weston is at that, in that right now.
We didn't get very much.
Yeah, yeah.
Weston didn't get very much,
Yes.
unfortunately.
And then you were talking about counselors, camp counselors, which, and you were talking about somebody had been abused. Are counselors in general, even if it's like a private camp, do they have their backgrounds checked?
Yes, they do.
And before they're hired? I'm assuming they do, but...
They do in the private camps. In municipal camps, it's not a requirement. However, most municipalities have, I'm not talking about camps now, but municipalities generally do background checks. So if you're hired within a municipality, you may already have had your background check, and it has to be done between 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But I don't know about camps, which is why we're doing this survey.
Yeah, well, I think it's very, it's necessary to keep kids safe.
Exactly.
And then your comments about ICE are very good, because honestly, I went through a program in Bridgeport to help people who were being pulled into court, and so that we could go and stand and be with them if they were in court or being taken somewhere by ICE. So, I did a course in Bridgeport for that.
Thank you.
And anyway, but that's it. And so thank you again. You guys are awesome, and I met you 100 years ago.
Barbara. Thank you, Barbara.
All right, here's our
It felt like that a
No,
lifetime
no,
ago.
no. Next up is our chairman of our Board of Finance, Mike Emmer.
Thank you. The single biggest variable in everybody's property taxes in this town in the next 2 years is whether we build a new middle school. And there's many questions, but the one I hope you can help us with is, when you go into session next year, what are the communities that we're going to be in competition with? And does it become a limited pie in terms of what we can hope to expect in the way of reimbursement against other communities? How tough's the competition going to be next year is really the question.
Well, within this district, I'll start and then you
Yeah.
can take on. Within this district, you will be I'm not sure it's a competition, okay? Truly, for dollars. Because I think it's about reimbursement rates, not so much, because a lot of this, I believe, comes out of bonding, not out of budget, okay? So the need will be based on the bonding funds. That's where the pot's coming from. It's not coming out of budgetary dollars. In Westport, they're doing a whole big school, and they're also looking for dollars. Norwalk just finished a ton, although it's not in the district. Stanford is doing it, but I think what you need to work with the next person on, and with Anne, is, because you want both of your delegation members to have their voice, is to work with the education committee to make sure that you increase the percentage of reimbursement, okay? Because right now the percentage of reimbursement is pretty much fixed, dependent upon, are you rebuilding new, are you renovating, is there a reason for you to have to renovate, such as mold or air quality? There's so many different factors, but it's really important to have a strong voice up in Hartford at the legislature in making sure that the reimbursement happens at a higher percentage. Because right now, I think your biggest concern is your reimbursement percentage is too small.
Yes.
Yes, I know.
But
I've been having those conversations.
We have been having those conversations and looking at some of the things that you're doing that, this administration really likes, like the right to read curriculum you're adopting. There is actual childcare on the campus, not necessarily on the middle school, but can we expand that? There are HVAC and ventilation concerns that need to be addressed. All of those things are, can increase your reimbursement rate. And I had some of your Board of Ed members talk with the chair, Senate Chair of Bonding, about what they felt like you could live with, which was somewhere around a 45% rate. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's...
Let the cameras show that Mike is smiling now.
I don't know if you can live with that or not, but I did ask, I said, these
We would
folks-
suffer, but we could live with
We could-
45%.
Okay. So we've had a conversation about supporting that. Let's put it that way. And we need to continue moving
The
in that
continue
direction.
is very important.
Exactly.
We'll be back to you about that.
Yes, of course,
Thank
of course. It's a good question. I mean, it affects everything, and we want to provide property tax relief, and we're not getting a lot in our, continued
Nor did you
municipal
get a
aid.
lot of ECS funding. I
No.
mean, it's about $11,000 was the increase, so that's de minimis.
And small.
I was just going to say, I'm the head of a nonprofit in our town, and occasionally when we apply for grants, being in Weston, I think that's why we don't get them, because it's considered an affluent town. So
Well,
that's
you
why
have gotten-
when you talk about the pie, I don't know, I just would think
Well, you
Weston
have
would
gotten
be
some
affected.
historical society
No,
grants.
no,
We
we-
have gotten
we
land
have, but we have
grants. We've
also-
gotten the Weston Library
Yeah.
expansion grant. It's not.
It's not-
It's more than some of my other towns.
Okay.
But I also want to mention that part of what the grants, some of the grants, not all of them, look at, and Sam and I talked about this in terms of the grant request for, it's coming out, B Park, begins with a B.
Fisegly Park.
Yes. The grant that was, the request there didn't happen, and part of it was because it was a self-focused town grant. So when some other towns might get a grant because not only are they providing services for their town, but they're also bringing in less resourced communities to engage in the area that's being funded. So that has an impact. So it's something that she and I talked about the potential for maybe doing that kind of outreach.
Just one little factoid that might be of interest. We may get a bad rap for being a wealthy town, but I would like to point out in the 3-year period between 2019 and 2022, the citizens of Weston collectively paid state taxes to Hartford, aggregating $222 million. It's over 3 years. If I went back and looked over a 20-year period, I'm pretty confident that's going to measure in the billions. So when we come marching up to Hartford saying, can you help us out with a little bit more?
I agree. I completely agree.
And especially because schools are educating our next citizens, and that is incredibly important.
And we've been carrying the load on public education the entire time.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Hi, thank you both for being here so much. 3 years ago, I believe that was our first Politics and Pie. I stood up with a child, my youngest son, about to enter Western Connecticut State University. And I think you'll probably remember the future of our state schools at that time was quite uncertain. The outlook was not necessarily sanguine. He has been able to get through. He's going to enter his senior year, fingers crossed. So I'm wondering if you could update us on where we're at, now versus then in terms of the health and forecasted future success of our state schools. Thank you.
So a lot's happened in those 3 years in terms of consolidation and bringing all of the community colleges and the West Cons, Southerns, all of those state universities, aside from UConn, under one roof. So we're now Connecticut State University, I can never get it right, CSCU, Connecticut State College, I don't know. Anyway, I can never get it right, but they're all brought together. I'm sorry, say that again, Tom.
Colleges and universities.
Colleges and Universities, CSCU. And so I want to say that it's been good, but at the same time, it's been a bit rocky. You know, you've been bringing all of these separate entities together into one system. We've had some leadership changes and some leadership missteps.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's been a little bit difficult. There's been issues around funding, but interestingly last year the drum was being beaten big time by the colleges and universities, and not so much this year, which I don't really know why. Do you have a handle on that?
We did tuck a debt-free community college into the budget, so that's part of the budget to expand that, to continue that. We did fund our promise programs and make sure that our scholarship programs throughout the state are prioritized and that they don't, some of you may have noticed if you got a scholarship, then the university or college would take it and then reduce your student aid.
Yeah.
So we ended that. Again, everyone's having trouble affording their colleges, but we don't want, we want you to be able to have confidence in the student aid package that your student is getting, and that we are committed to that student graduating in Connecticut, and then hopefully bringing all that talent and all that education into the community and not going somewhere else. We expand, again, a lot of this is filling the gaps. The federal administration ended the supplemental loan program for graduate loans for social workers, for all kinds of teachers, and as social workers, we're really offended by that.
We were called non-professional.
We're called non-professionals. So we stood up our own CHESLA program through CHESLA to supplement those loans and to say if you were getting a federal loan that's not now been yanked because of your profession, we're going to continue that on the state behalf. But the leadership challenges, I don't want to minimize. It's been a nightmare, kind of like, and it has further diminished our confidence, I feel like, in our excellent state college and university program.
I think the other part of that leadership challenge has been that we have not had a visionary, strong person at the forefront arguing for funding, arguing for making sure, like at WestCon, as you know, there are buildings there that are in bad repair.
Although we have done
Yes.
some bonding, and
Yes.
I just went on this this tour a couple of months ago, and I was so relieved to see the damage from the flooding and the concrete, and some of those bathrooms have finally been upgraded and fixed.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
I was like, are we kidding? Again, 2026, this is our signature thing. The other thing we did do is the feds took away a lot of our research funding. And again, it harms the entire institution. It harms our flagship university doing cutting edge research, in all kinds of areas. And we did plug some of those holes. Yeah, we can hear you.
So I want to follow up on some of the voting, the decisions that have been made. And bravo, I'm really pleased about the early voting.
No
absentee.
excuse, absentee.
Absentee. So when it comes to this 250-foot rule, how will that, if now we're a small town, but
Right.
but we still might run into problems. So we see it, someone sees it. Who do they call? How do this,
Our local municipal.
so the police
So
department
we
is
are
going to-
saying our departments and our local, state police and everything need to follow these new laws that we have put in to protect
Right.
our communities, to protect our communities and to have free and fair elections. Free and fair elections. That is in our Constitution, and that is in now upgraded laws to protect that. how that's implemented, again, we're leaving towns to help resource and ask for help if they need it from the state around that. And I know we didn't give our registrars enough money.
Well, so.
I know
from a-
that.
From a
That's
tactical,
for sure.
I know. I feel really bad about that.
from a way to move forward, if something were to happen during voting period, you would call the local police would call the state police.
And there's a helpline too.
And
There's
there's
a Secretary of State helpline.
Because we're, a lot of us really do want, just as observers, maybe
Yeah,
around-
to be,
just
exactly.
standing around the outside, just making, because we feel concern.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
We want to protect.
Yeah, on the issue of masks, no masks, et cetera, when it comes to ICE,
Mhm.
I know it's a state mandate or a
Mhm.
state law.
And you've heard
I
that,
have.
they are defying our state
That's what
law.
I'm hearing.
Yes.
How's it going, guys?
Not great. Again, we have to figure out how we want to challenge that. Right now, the Attorney General has been really great about taking up the challenge and saying you're defying state law. And again, a lot of these executive orders or directives from this administration are illegal,
Yeah.
A lot of the ones around disabilities, rights to live in the community, illegal. It does not negate the Americans with Disabilities Act, which, by the way, was championed by our own Lowell Weicker. It does not negate these, but we're relying on the lower courts to implement the law. So, I've given out my card, my cell number to at-risk communities and say, if I can, like Barbara, if we can be a buffer, if we can be, in between those who attempt to harm and kidnap our community members.
Two other very short questions. How do we find what the 10 PFAs that are?
Or PFAS?
Yeah, it's on the DEEP website, but,
Okay, I'll look for it.
yeah, email me too, and I can send that out.
When you say the deep website, it sounds like the deep dark.
Yeah. Department of Energy and Environment Protection, yes. The deep.
And one last thing, this is something you can't answer necessarily, but I heard the minority leader, Senate Minority Leader, federal, speak of how his party is going to be sending individuals to states all over the country to protect against what Steve Bannon is talking about. And I don't mean to get political in this, political one, but what would be the protocol for a state where if a party wants to send out observers to make sure that we don't have weapons near a polling place? Because that was Senator Schumer's concern, and because we have people talking this way.
Mhm.
And it's really not a fair question, I don't expect an answer, but if there was anything that was known, maybe I could learn about it.
Well, I think that the most important thing is every party is allowed to send observers, as long as they observe the setback rules and are there purely as an observer, not as a rabble-rouser or a campaigner.
Yeah.
Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Working Family Party, everyone can send observers. That's not a problem. Because, as you know, when we're doing the vote tallies, you always have the parties present for that. So that is the absolute, I'm guessing, right of assembly to be able to do that. So that's one thing. It's another whole thing if someone shows up with a gun, if they're wearing masks, if they cross the line. That's when we need to step back as observers and engage our municipal police and our state police.
And the other thing, we're so grateful that you all did vote in a referendum to implement early voting. We need to tell our friends and, our neighbors, you can early vote just like the same day, so that it diffuses, what are we gonna send? 2 weeks of people all day long trying to intimidate? It really diffuses and decentralizes you know, how people are going to try to intimidate this election or any election. So let's use the rights that we finally voted in by referendum and through two-thirds majority.
I have seen as a poll worker,
Yeah.
people literally intimidate inside, and of course, we've just said thank you for, please do not stay, we want you to move on. But it's just,
Yeah, so I feel like our community, neighbor to neighbor, helping support everybody's right to a free and fair election, early voting, absentee. We've put in some measures to make that more secure, more barcode. You can track it. You know, the drop boxes, we have really protected and put cameras on, and right outside the police station or town hall, let's use them. You know, a lot of people don't trust the USPS mail with ballots. I don't blame you. Drop boxes, you know, like let's do it. Our early our absentee ballot voting, it will be available, you know, over a month early. So
you
let's
can always get a hand stamp.
Yeah.
exactly.
Post office and get a hand stamp.
Exactly, so let's, and then we can track it, you know, you can track it, you can have confidence in that. So we've got to exercise all the things, all the things.
We've got a question.
Hi,
Oh, I'm sorry.
this is on, right? I live on a state road, Newtown Turnpike, Route 53. We've got a couple of culverts that need to be widened. We've had extreme flooding, and they need to be maintained. I talked to Larry Roberts, who runs Public Works, and he said the state says they don't have the money. How is that possible? I mean, this is a stretch of road where we have literally a lake on top of Newtown Turnpike. You probably know where it is, the cones go up. And in March, they came and did something, but they actually need to widen those culverts, and they need to, you know, annually at least, you know, clear them up, maintain them. And, you know, I've talked to Sam Nestor about this, just don't know what's gonna make anything happen. And so Larry Roberts says, this won't happen until 2028. Wow, is the state that short of funds?
Well, I think it's like everybody's budget, you know, and I don't mean to be, I'm not being facetious when I say that. I will absolutely follow up on that and ask, because I haven't heard this before, so it's really helpful to get that information.
Yeah, I'm at 262 Newtown Turnpike.
262.
And then the other culvert is at 270.
Okay.
I think my office has been in touch with you
Have
about
you?
that, because
Yes.
I've escalated it to
Okay.
Mary Ann Daly of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and we've had some back and forth about their schedule on that. Is that right?
You know, there's another neighbor who's been on this a little more than I
Right.
have. I know we did hear from Donald Ramson, Transportation
Yep,
Maintenance
he's the
Director.
supervisor for this area.
And they did come and do something back
Yep.
in March, but it's dangerous. You know, people go down there, you know, 55 miles an hour, and there are plumes of water, and, you know, they could run off the road, and it could be pretty dangerous, so
Trying to figure out where that is.
I could,
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Ann and I can talk about it and follow up with
Okay.
DOT.
I don't think the flat, we don't have enough money is an acceptable response for that. So, thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, I have to reiterate, I mean, it's the main thoroughfare, so to speak, through Weston from,
Yep.
you know, north, and it's a lake.
And with climate change getting more extreme,
Yeah, and
we
it's
know
not
it-
just been once or twice, it's.
we did increase some resiliency funding in the Department of Transportation just this session. You know, it's meant to harden our, you know, roads and bridges and train lines for extreme climate, you know, flooding and all that because of what happened. Was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Which Weston got hit
August.
really hard, and we lost a life due to that.
August 2020.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's still bridges out in Reading from that.
Yep.
And
And
there's
he's-
some huge potholes on 53 that you actually can't necessarily wind around, and they got to the point where they're so deep, you're gonna lose a tire. So, you know, and I've mentioned that to our folks too, but, you know, if they say, well, it's the state, it's not us.
Well, please escalate. I've been fielding several on Black Rock Turnpike in Reading and this one, but I have got a good friend in Department of Transportation, and that has been super responsive and sent people out, and so let's keep that corridor open of communication.
So Route 53 washed out up above the reservoir,
Right,
and they're putting a lot of effort in that now.
exactly, because you raised a ruckus, and that's what we need to do sometimes.
Well, and also, it's a state road and it was dangerous.
Yeah, but they don't know about it until you tell them, really.
And they've been surveyed down
Okay,
in Tim's neighborhood,
thank you.
and Larry's right. They're gonna do something, but not too soon.
Not too soon, not soon enough, not soon enough, I hear you, thank you.
I've been on their case for a while.
Thank you for your advocacy, takes a village.
So it's after 1 o'clock. Any other questions? Oh, we have a hand up.
Well, it's not really a question.
Comment.
Just a kind of a comment. I've long been interested in the child welfare policy, and I'm so delighted to read here that this new oversight committee is being formed.
You want to be on it? I hear your delight and I'll raise you one.
Well, you know, I think this is such a neglected area.
Yes.
It has been for decades in
Thank
the
you.
state. When I was in college, decades ago, I did a internship with, it was DCYF at the time.
Yep.
And they had just launched the group homes.
Mhm.
And so I and another student, as part of our senior thesis, visited all the group homes and evaluated them. We had set standards, we worked with the administrators in the department. And then I was so disheartened when I came back with the final report, because this is not the top level of administrators, but the managers who are actually going to execute things. They just kind of shelved it, and they were just, they were tired, they were overworked, and this was just something they, didn't want to look at, didn't want to feel that they could make changes, or felt that they could make changes. So, it's a long time coming that this review is going to take place, but does it always have to come to fatalities?
I know.
So
It's really interesting. As you probably know from the timing of when you were doing the report, DCF was under, oh God, I can never remember the word. They were under the oversight of courts for years, like over 20 years. They came out from under that, I want to say maybe 8 or 10 years ago. I wasn't up there then, so I don't remember exactly, but 8 or 10 years ago, there was tremendous excitement about the changes and the fact that it was going to be oversight by the state. And for 5 years, we had the DCF commissioner who started as a social worker, worked her way all the way up. She was excellent. She got taken away by a national foundation. Good for her, deserved it. And then we had a 2-year DCF commissioner who was also really good, and she got taken away by another foundation. So now we have a commissioner who just started. She was confirmed this spring. But what we are seeing is, and this has been a bone of great contention with me and my co-chair, is that the court oversight actually kept the feet to the fire for DCF in a way that we haven't seen. And so over time, the amount of visibility and transparency and all of that has kind of diminished. And so this oversight committee is to make sure that we have voices from across the state, from across different areas of input, including parents, caregivers, foster caregivers, so that we can make sure that we are addressing the issues that are systemic in DCF. And change it into the kind of place it needs to be. And one of the things that I find just so alarming is that DCF is the behavioral health entity for all of the children in our state. They are the primary oversight for behavioral health for children, which is nuts to me because no one in their right mind is going to go, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. It's very impolitic. People don't tend to go to DCF for looking for help. They tend to go to DCF because they've been reported or, you know, there's some sort of problem, quote unquote problem. So what that means is it becomes walled off in a fortress because people don't use it. So I really believe my co-chair is very committed to this. I think this is going to be a really good thing. Will it take time to get it organized and start to see changes? Yes. But one of the things that is going to happen right away is by January of 2027, we are going to have a public-facing website which will include the transparency to say what's happening at DCF, how many kids in care, how many in behavioral health. Oh, I'll be part of that committee until January. So we're really working on that. It's a big issue and needs to be addressed.
Tremendous issue.
But
future.
you raise such an important point. What does it take to make systemic change? What does it take? And unfortunately, some of these tragedies are what prompts it to the forefront to put resources and talent and dollars to systemic change is unfortunately how a lot of systems respond. So I'm committed to systemic, durable, sustainable change, and again, I feel like our government needs to be about protecting the most vulnerable. And I came out of working in the group homes as a group home manager, and when she says funding nonprofits, that's what she's talking about. We deinstitutionalized in the 70s and said, oh, well, we're going to do this all in the community. Well, who's going to do it? These nonprofits, except we're not going to fund them. So really, who's ending up taking care of the most vulnerable, the least qualified, the least trained, the least paid, and the biggest turnover rate? That is not acceptable on my watch.
And to go back to the question about the culverts on 53, it sort of goes back to what I said in the beginning about the budget. Yes, it's phenomenal. We're paying down $10 billion.
But not at the expense
But
of
how do we make
needs.
sure that the DOT budget is sufficient to meet the infrastructure needs in a changing climate, as well as all the other areas of support, such as DCF, So this is why I spoke about trying to hold it in both hands and be balanced. I don't think that that is always the conversation we're having up in Hartford. But
Right. But,
anyway.
but we're committed to it, we're committed to responsible services. We don't have county government, we just have local and state. So the state is responsible for a lot.
Well, thank you, legislators, for coming and spending some of your
Thank you guys,
Saturday.
thank you guys for showing up on a Saturday. We appreciate you.
And I also want to say, I guess this will be our last Politics and Pie with you as a panelist.
But come join the audience.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For an honorary membership.
Thank you
And
thank you for
also-
showing up and take important numbers that might be helpful to your friends and neighbors. Healthcare advocate, Pura, Medicare hotline, veterans benefits, that's on the back of this card. Please take those.
And on your way out, make sure you check out the pies. They're really
Delicious, they're
delicious.
delicious.
And great thing for dinner. There's some are savory, so.
I'm gonna have
for lunch. All right, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, hang on. Need.